share her expertise with decodable texts, and we will share a little bit about Everyone Reads PA and some of the other literacy organizations across the state of Pennsylvania. I'm so excited to see people joining us from those organizations. We have, attendees from school districts and Patton and the Reading League Pennsylvania, and I'm sure I'm missing someone. I'm looking here at the attendees. We have people from literacy publishers and other evidence-based products. So it's really exciting to see all of you here tonight. It's particularly exciting to see all the families here because Jen has a lot to share with you this evening in terms of how to use decodable texts, what they are, and how to use them with your kids in the classroom and at home. So I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes and then we can get rolling and let Jen do her thing. If you have questions tonight, please put them in the chat. We will try to curate them and answer them as best as we can. We did get quite a few questions in the registration, and I think that Jen has, I think she's seen them all and is planning on answering most of them. But if you do not get answers to your questions, we are always available and we'll give you our contact information and ways to reach out to our organization and other organizations depending on your need. And I think there's someone. There's someone in Facebook, Jen. Do you see that?
I'm checking.
So I think we'll give it like 2 more minutes and then we're going to get started.
Sorry, I always feel bad like looking down and not trying to be rude.
If you just joined us, can you please let us know where you're from, just so we can get an idea of the community that we have with us tonight. That will just help us know where everyone's coming from and who we have here tonight. And then there are a couple different chats going on, so.
Yes, quite a few. There's quite a few chats that I'm answering to. I'm sorry, I don't mean to look down and be rude. I'm getting some, I need the link messages.
Yeah, and then just so you will be getting lots of information tonight. There will be resources available online. So if you miss something, most of it should be available to you after tonight. And if you can't find it, we will be happy to share it with you. We have, it looks like we have someone here tonight from Reading Aloud, which is another amazing literacy organization in Pennsylvania. Thank you for joining us. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anyone else.
I see a few people from the western side of Pennsylvania as well. So thanks to them for being here too.
We've got Radnor, hello Radnor, Collegeville, Springfield, Australia, Harrisburg, Philadelphia. Wow. Jen, I think we should just get started. And as we move through the night, I can kind of follow up. Hi from Georgia, Missy, thank you for joining us. And Jen, why don't I get started and introduce you? Welcome everyone to Everyone Reads PA Family Night. This is one of our education sessions that we do for families who we serve usually through our primary function. What we do most of the time is provide families with support in literacy through screenings, evidence-based screenings, literacy advocacy, and then education events like this or individual one-on-one events. As a result of doing our early bird screenings with pre-K through first grade families, we realized that there were a lot of families who needed support at home. They had great schools and they were engaging with their schools, but they wanted to know how to support their emergent readers at home. And while we were able to do some work with families one-on-one or in smaller sessions, we felt like it would be really helpful to bring someone in to explain to families and educators how to use a very important tool for emergent readers. And the important tool that we're going to talk about tonight is something called decodable text or decodable readers. This is not the only tool that you would use with an emergent reader, but it's one that most of us who are adults have not experienced or did not experience when we were learning to read, and might not have experienced with our children if they're older, than maybe 5 or 6 at this point. So Jenn is going to help us understand this, but I'd like to introduce Jenn and let you know a little bit about her. Jenn is a Pennsylvania kindergarten teacher. She's been in the classroom in Pennsylvania for over 17 years and has, over the course of the last, I would say, I think, Jenn, and I might be wrong, the last few years,
like 5, I would say.
Okay, so the last 5 years really committed to these evidence-based literacy instruction. Otherwise, another kind of synonym that we use is the science of reading. And she, like most of us educators who did our training prior to the last probably 5 years, I think, did not learn about the science of reading in her teacher education program, or in many of the professional development programs that she participated in after she did her teacher training. So Jenn has a classroom of kindergartners throughout the school year, but she also is committed to providing educators and families with access to information and resources that support evidence-based literacy instruction or the science of reading. She is and I'm going to miss this. She participates or is on the advisory board for the McGraw-Hill National Teacher Advisory Board. And she has training in Orton-Gillingham. And one of the things that Jenn and I talk about a lot that we're very excited about, the Patton has a new science of reading course that's amazing, and she's participated in that training as well. In addition to those trainings, she's also participated in over 60 other trainings, but those are the ones we're most excited about. And we want to give a shout out to one of our attendees who is here tonight, Dr. Pam Kastner, who is one of the developers of that Patton course. And the reason I'm telling you about that now, even though many of you are families, and aren't thinking about professional development, but it's an amazing, I would say, one of the best science of reading based or evidence-based courses for educators. And it fulfills the criteria or one of the what is it called? The structured literacy competencies that were just introduced in Pennsylvania a year or two ago that are required for all at least K-8 teachers, I think, special ed reading specialists, and I might be missing a few, but that's Jenn, and she's going to take it from here. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We will try to answer them as we go through. We really appreciate you all being here, and please bear with us as this is our first event that we've hosted. So we might have some glitches, and feel free, if you know me, to text me if we have anything going on that's not good, or share it in the chat. So Jenn, take it from here.
Hi, thank you so much for being here, especially on a Tuesday night in the summer. I think it's Tuesday. I lose track of all my days. We've had a really busy summer of trainings. I have been working on sharing as many of those as possible. So without further ado, I'd like to share a little bit about decodables with you tonight. So I wanted to open tonight with a quote, and I heard this on Dr. Shanahan's. He has a new podcast out. It goes right along with his blogs that he writes. And one of the openers on one of the episodes was, "There's no nobler act than to teach someone to read." And whether you're an educator, a policymaker, a community member, or all of the things, we all have an important role to play in reading. And so I like to take a minute to think about that we are all involved in that noble act. And if you feel a little overwhelmed or underprepared for that, don't worry, we're here to help you. So before we get into decodable books, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what decoding actually is. And when you're decoding, you're matching your letters to sounds. And truthfully, what is decoding? It's sounding things out. And when we're practicing that, we want to make sure that our child or our students understand that letters spell sounds. And when I talk to my kindergartners about this, I say to them, do you know that these letters we have on the wall, they are just a picture of a sound? And they all say, oh my goodness, wow, I never thought of it that way. And so what we're trying to get them to understand then is the alphabetic principle, or that letters spell sounds. And I'm going to explain this little ice cream over here. And in the resources that we're going to share with you at the end of the slides is a bookmark that I made based on this ice cream. I put it together for my grandparents that were coming for Grandparents' Day. I wanted to have a resource to share with community members coming into the classroom. So I'm going to explain how to briefly use this so that you can use it in your classroom or your home, or share it in your community, depending on what your role is. And then it also has a poster version so that you can print them out one on a page and hang it up in a bigger version if you'd like to do that as well. So the first thing that when we're reading that we want to do is we're going to look at the letters that are written on the page. You want to make sure that we're actually reading what the word says. So when you get your book out and you're reading with a child, you want to say, let's look at the letters. Then if we come to a word we don't know, we're going to tap the sounds, and you can do that with your fingers. And I wrote it out pretty specifically. This is how I would talk to my kids about this in a kindergarten class. We start with our pointer, and there's a number of different ways that people do this, but this is what works best for the kindergartners in my class. We put our pointer to our thumb of our non-writing hand, because eventually we want to be able to tap and write. But when we're reading, we tap from our pointer to our thumb, and then the next sound goes from our middle finger to our thumb, and so on. And when we're first reading, I just tell the kids, if you run out of fingers, we can just start over again and go back to our pointer finger. That way we don't have to get caught up in all of those extra rules. And sometimes the kids will get very frustrated. Well, I don't know what to do next. I'm out of fingers. It makes it a really smooth and simple process to just say, okay, when I get to my pinky, if I need another sound, I can go right back to my pointer finger. As your child becomes more advanced with their sounds, you might be able to introduce some different strategies, but as I begin, we just go through and go back to the beginning if we need to. Now, here's some top tips that I've come across while doing this. Sometimes, especially if you're reading at home, your child might come to a new sound or an unknown sound. When I do this with my readers, I say to them, in this word, the letter spells this sound. Here's an example. In this word, AR spells R, like in the word jar. Instead of having your reader sit and try to figure it out, guess, look in a picture, or get very frustrated, if you've been reading with your child as they start the school year and you're thinking, oh, I know for sure in kindergarten they haven't learned the bossy R yet, I will just say to them, this is something we haven't learned yet. So in the word jar, AR spells R. Or if you come to, they want to read this new book and they want to take a turn at reading, and you come to a new or unknown word, you can just tell the reader what the word is instead of using a poor guessing strategy. So you're reading a story and you come to the word street in the sentence, you can say, this is the word street, instead of saying, well, look in the picture, what do you see? I found that it's easier to give them the sound or the word instead of encouraging them to practice a strategy that will encourage a poor reader's skill. So after we've tapped our sounds on our fingers, we slide our thumb across the fingers as we blend the sounds together. So when I start, I'll say elbows up and we'll tap our sounds on our fingers. And I like to touch my fingers as I slide my thumb across so that I can feel that blending happening. And it reminds the kids that, oh, blending means to slide them together. You can start really slow as you do it and then go faster if needed. You'll kind of feel it out as you're going. If you're noticing that your reader's having trouble getting the sounds to blend, you can stretch them really slowly and then start to go faster as they start to pick up the skill. After you've blended them together, the reader is ready to read the word on the page. And then finally, if you think the word's new or if it has more than one meaning, it's important to take a minute to connect to the meaning. So if the word is mat, like on our sample, you might want to talk to the child about, is it a name? Is it for yoga? Is it something that you put in front of your door? We had an interesting conversation in my classroom this year about the word pop. If you live in Western Pennsylvania, pop is a drink with bubbles in it. But in our story, it was the grandfather's name. And a lot of the kids were like, I was wondering how we were going to clean up, how Pop was going to clean the floor. He had a mop in his hand, and they wondered how a bubbly drink was going to clean the floor. So it's really important. It may seem very simple for us as adults, like, well, of course it's the person, but for beginning readers, it's really important to have some of those connection conversations because we don't always know what they're thinking about. And especially if you have some MLL, multi-language learners in your classroom, it's extremely important to have some of those conversations because those meanings aren't going to happen as naturally as children who have been speaking English from birth or children who have lots of language experiences in their homes. And it also can lead to some really interesting and fun conversations as well for everybody. So let's practice. And there's a sample of this in our resources as well. So we would tap and say, p, I, t. And then when it slides, you slide to and say pit. And you can customize the one that's in the resources as well. I also like to use paper soundboards. You can use these to have the kids just tap on the board. Sometimes I tape them to my desk when I'm working with a student and they use their finger to just tap in the empty boxes. You can also use things like mini erasers or coins or cereal. Those are things that I usually recommend to my parents that you'd have at home on hand, because you only need a few if you'd like to have something to put in the boxes so that they can feel the movement for each sound. And eventually you could put them in a Ziploc bag, or if you have a laminator or packing tape, you can cover it with something and write on it with a wipe off marker and transfer your sounds to writing. But of course, in the beginning, you want to make sure they understand that each sound is there. And eventually you can move into writing the spellings for those sounds. And these are also on our resource page as well. So now that we've talked about decoding a little bit, let's talk a little bit about research-based materials. So for as long as my career has been, and Kate mentioned that I've been teaching kindergarten for 17 years, when I was in undergrad and grad school, we learned about leveled readers and guided reading. And when I started, I didn't know that I was supposed to ask questions. When you're new, it's hard to ask questions. And so we learned about all of these things, and my personality was to do a really good job at it. So I did. And we learned about leveled readers. We filled our classrooms with them. And those books are filled with words that are repeated, phrases that are repeated. And sometimes when kids would read those books to me, I would think, I feel like they are repeating the same things on every page. I'm not really sure if they are actually reading to me. And that is part of how the level reader works. It does teach kids to follow the patterns and guess, and they're not decoding the words on the pages. Whereas our decodable readers, they are mostly decodable, which is 80% or more of the words. And The words that are not decodable, we are explicitly teaching them to the kids ahead of time, and it helps beginning readers become fluent while they're reading. And the next couple of slides, we're going to do a skill analysis. And the purpose of that is just to compare the skills. I'm not trying to bash anybody's products or anything like that, or promote a specific publisher. I just want to make sure I can show you how a book works. And I also have all of our sources cited. So
Jen, can I just jump in
sure,
1 second to kind of, before she goes into showing some examples, just to give families and a little bit of a background knowledge. And Jenn is doing a very good job of being exceptionally diplomatic in terms of talking about different types of text. Leveled text and decodable readers are different. Leveled texts are not recommended. They are not evidence-based. They are not supported by research, particularly for emergent readers, kids who are learning the code. So when kids are given these readers early, and they memorize or use pictures and all the things Jenn talked about, they can sometimes present as if they are readers and not be. And this is particularly important. It's important for everyone, but most important for educators and parents to know this, because struggling readers or kids who are not who don't effectively or easily access code and who need explicit instruction, maybe in higher dosage or more repetitions, they struggle even more and absolutely must have lots of exposure to decodable text. When I say that, I don't mean that it's not important for everyone to have some exposure, but I just wanted to give you that background because Jenn is an educator in a classroom in a public school in Pennsylvania. And there are some things that, she is very diplomatic about, but Everyone Reads PA is here to share things with families and educators so that hopefully we can take those things and implement them so that all kids have access to evidence-based tools and instruction at this moment. So sorry, Jenn, to butt in there, but I just wanted to.
Okay, that's why you're here. So we're going to go into a little bit more about why it's so important to use the evidence-based resources. So this would be a front cover from a leveled reader, and I just highlighted some of the skills for us. There's a vowel team, a bossy R, and a consonant LE. If we go to the next, and this is just one of the page samples. In this part, there's a vowel team, digraph, magic E, a schwa, a bossy R, consonant LE. I'll give you just a second to soak all that in. And here's another page sample. Again, a lot of these higher level skills, and this is a middle of the year kindergarten book. If you've heard of the lingo before, it's known as a level B. And also this has a CE, spells the sound in there as well, which is a very difficult skill for kindergartners, even later in the year. We discussed that with some of our math vocabulary in my class, and it's very difficult for them to find a space for that in their memory. Okay, now, middle of the year kindergarten, leveled reader. These are the skills that most scope and sequences will have, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But most kindergartners will know some consonant sounds, most of their short vowels, and have some taught high frequency words in their vocabulary. The skills that you need for this book: all of your consonants, short vowels, vowel teams, magic E's, bossy R's, consonant LE's, schwas, digraphs that CE spells. And you also need to know what multi-syllabic words that have more than one syllable. And that's just this book. If you picked up a different book, also marked level B, it could have a whole different set of skills in it with a completely different list of terms that you'd need to know, because leveled readers don't have a list of skills that are related to each other. And we can have an hours-long conversation about my thoughts and opinions on that, but I'm not here to bore you with that part. We're going to move on to the next section. And as a reminder, Dr. Anita Archer tells us that there is no comprehension strategy powerful enough to compensate for the fact that you can't read the words. We can go on and on all evening about how, well, we're learning things from these books. Well, of course, that's great. But if you cannot read the words on a page, you're not going to be an independent reader. Part of being an independent reader is reading the words. But there's hope. Decodable books are where we start. We look at a front cover, we have words that we can sound out. And I highlighted our sight word here. Here's
Jen,
a page sample.
can you tell them why that's a sight word? Because they look the same.
Oh, the word has would be a sight word because the S is a Z sound. It is the most common sound. And when you explain that to our youngest readers, they can generally pick that up pretty quickly, but it's not a typical sound. We call them an expected sound in my class, the sound that you would expect it to make when you see it. I can't think of what we call it, your phonetically regular sound. And yes, that's what we say in kindergarten. When we use the correct terminology, the kids, even in kindergarten, are able to understand what it means. So don't be afraid to use the correct terminology, but I'll say to them, is that the phonetically regular sound? And they'll say, nope. But that one they pick up pretty quickly, that the S could spell a Z sound. And if we're being really honest, if somebody said has, it sounds pretty close, and they're going to say, oh, that's the word has. Sometimes we talk about different dialects and accents, and Jeff, I know you're out there. Sometimes we pretend we're Australian or British with our A's as well, but a sight word would be one that doesn't make an expected sound when you go to sound it out. Does that help, Kate?
That's perfect. I want to tell families that you're going to hear Jen talking about some things might be confusing. The big deal is if you're using the text that your kids can access, that's going to support them. So you don't need to be an expert and you don't need to know everything that Jen knows. But it's very helpful to be using that. This is why we're teaching you about decodable text, because it's much different to be using a decodable text than a leveled text, because with a leveled text, you are teaching habits or strategies that are not going to support your children as they move on to become proficient readers. So I don't want you to get worried about the rules and the lingo. You'll learn more from Jen tonight, and you'll learn where to kind of support that. But that's not the most important part. The most important part is giving you access and your children access to these tools. So thank you, Jen.
Mm-hmm. And in this particular series, the Express Readers, she calls them sticky words, and she will highlight them at the beginning of the book for you. We'll talk about that in a couple of slides on the scope and sequence, but they are highlighted right out in the front. Decodable books, and Kate and I talked about this yesterday, decodable books don't hide secrets from you. You don't go into the story like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that word was coming. They are very upfront with you about the things that you might want to talk about ahead of time. And they will also let you know what skills are in the book, and they're built upon in a sequence so that it makes sense, and they spiral back and review too. That's how that they are a good resource for our early readers. That we're not guessing at things, or each book is a different set of skills that have no relation to each other. So when we're reading these books, our words are decoded first before we explore the pictures. Our sounds, letter names, and our sight words are explicitly taught and reviewed. And when I read with my kindergartners, we read the words first. One of my little ones last year was our number one cheerleader for that. I would always say, what do we do first? And he would jump out of his chair and yell, we read the words. And then afterwards, I would say, After we're done, we can enjoy the pictures. The pictures are not irrelevant, but after you read the words, then enjoy the pictures. And they can be used to add meaning to the story. But when I am working with the smallest readers or the beginning readers, we really want to focus on those words first. And here's another sample. Our focus is on controlled practice. Our sentences may use the same sound skills, but they are not the same as the last page or predictable. And our decodable books, as I was mentioning, they follow an organized introduction of sounds from easiest to hardest. And decodable book, middle of the year kindergarten, and you'll notice the list's a little shorter on the other side this time. Skills you have, some consonant sounds, no short vowels, and taught high frequency words, and the skills you need are the same. Some consonant sounds, most short vowels, and taught high frequency words. That's how we want it to work. We don't, again, want to see surprises and bring in things that are going to make our kids have a harder time with something that we are supposed to be teaching them as we go. Okay, we talked a little bit about scope and sequence. Now, you might be looking at your screen like, whoa, this is a lot of information here. This is the entire series, Scope and Sequence, and it just tells you what's in the book. It's the expected things you're going to see. Again, there's not secrets in decodable books. You're not guessing at what you're doing. So this is a highlight of just step one, which is where the book that we were just looking at comes from. So I made the column just a little bit of a pop out for you. So we have our consonant letter sounds. This particular group is the medial short vowels. And then here's our book we were just looking at. Bug has a hut. And then it also has supplemental sets as well. This particular series has a lot of different resources that go right along with each story.
And Jen, can I just jump in for a sec and share about scopes? And I never know where to put the plural, but I think scope and sequences can be very different depending on programs, curriculum. And one thing that is confusing for educators and parents is the sight words and or sticky words, tricky words. There are lots of different things we use to describe them. And in Jen's example of the decodables that she was sharing, the words that she had identified as sight words are words that program calls sight words or tricky words. And when we talk about evidence-based, when we talk about acquiring the code and we talk about how kids learn words, all words that kids can automatically produce when they're reading are considered sight words. So we want to use decodable text to help to support kids becoming proficient readers and acquiring a broader sight word base. So I want families particularly, and any educators who are new to decodable text to understand that Jen and none of us are suggesting that kids should be memorizing words. When you're given decodables, sometimes there are a few words that have not been learned and don't follow patterns within the scope and sequence of the program. But we consider and researchers consider sight words to be those words that we can produce automatically upon when we read them. And the way we do that is by mapping those words into our memory and our brain. So that's a little, and it's deep, and there are people who are participating in this who could explain it much better than me. And there are lots of things you can watch to help you understand that. But I think when you leave this session, you should know that Jen is advocating for and we're advocating for our children to be learning to sound out words and not memorize them. And that sight words are words that have been mapped in our brain to become automatic. So I hope that makes sense. And I'm sorry to jump in, but I just wanted to clarify.
No, that's okay. I have other knowledge and resources for how to sound out sight words, but that would add probably a whole additional at least an hour of discussion to this, and you're already taking a whole hour out of your time. So I didn't want to go into all of the how to sound out sight words, but I do definitely encourage the sounding out of sight words as well. And if you'd like more information on that, I'm sure we could discuss talking about that at another time. But like I said, I didn't want to overcomplicate because there's already a lot of information for everyone to take in, especially if this is your first time listening, or if you are a parent that is trying to gather information for at home. I really didn't want to overcomplicate too much.
Yeah, and I think, Jen, in each scope and sequence, there are different memory words or words and families should be aware of that. When you get it, when you choose your decodable text series, they're going to have different names and they're going to be presented differently, but just know kind of what your end goal is, I think. Yes. And Jen, thank you, and I appreciate that explanation.
So I think a lot of us have heard about decodables even a little bit, and sometimes they have a negative reputation as being boring, forgive me, or there's not enough content. How can you write a story with just a few sounds? There are a lot of really great decodables out on the market, and I know that there are several writers, publishers, creators on this call right now. Thank you for being here to each of them. And I'm just going to go over a couple different kinds. So there are, and again, this is not a comprehensive list. There are so many, and more enter the market every so often as well. So there are decodables about animals. There are decodable comic books. There are decodables that match programs that you're using, such as Heggerty. And I have a special announcement for you about that at the end. There are decodable books that use controlled phonics, and that's the point, to make sure that we are using the skills that we're practicing. There are books that specifically focus on skill practice. Now, we're not talking about those books, and you may have seen them before, and we won't get into my full opinions on that, but books that start with all of the same letter. And it doesn't matter if the letter was, balloon or baboon, or these really, really long words that didn't fit with what the knowledge of the child and the reader was. But now they are making decodable books that do fit into certain skills. If you are working on that B sound, they do make books that fit with that. And if you're working with older readers, we had quite a few questions about, how do I work with a child that's struggling to read in middle school and high school? They have decodable chapter books now, so that those readers that need specific targeted skill practice can pick up a book that is thick and feels like all the other books that their peers have, but they're reading it too because it's focused on their skills. So you can get a chapter book that's decodable, and there's a whole bunch of different choices too. There are printable decodables. There are decodables that provide mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And if you're not familiar with that term, books that allow us to look at ourselves, that allow us to look out into the worlds of places where we don't live, or people that we don't know that are in other places in the world, and they allow us to have different experiences than what we might have in our typical neighborhood or our typical school. And there are decodable books that do that as well. And there are also some really fantastic electronic decodable books. And I know that there are some of you that were asking about what kind of books you could use at home. There are some fantastic electronic ones that, if you don't have the budget to go out and buy a whole bunch of decodable books for your home, they have some really fantastic electronic books available as well. There's also graphic novels. I know that they're all the rage right now. I was reading about how they can hardly keep them stocked when new editions come out. Now we have graphic novels available, and Sue actually just released a second graphic novel as well, so that the kids that see again all their peers, and that's a big thing for, your older readers. Fitting in with your peers is part of growing up. And if you want to have a graphic novel, you want to love to read, have that experience that your peers are having, she has that too. And the books are fantastic. I've looked at both of her books that she has. And we even have vocabulary decodables where in this particular example, you're sounding out a vocabulary word, and then you're looking at different examples of what that word can mean. So even with the word chop in this example, you're looking at 5 different ways that could be used, and it's building your vocabulary as well through a decodable. And you also can have decodables that match your core program. This particular example is from Wonders, and yesterday we discussed this in our pre-meeting, Kate, about how sometimes families, when you're getting resources coming home from school, they may not be decodables. If your district doesn't have the decodables package, or they are piecing things together from lots of different resources, they may not be authentic decodables that go along with your programs. So you may want to just cautiously look at the resources that you're getting that go with it. I've been doing some work in my county. If anybody's here from Beaver County tonight, we are working on getting the authentic texts that go with your core programs into all of the libraries in our county. But you'd want to make sure that the ones that you're looking at definitely are decodable, because sometimes they are not. They are actually leveled readers that are repetitive. So.
Yeah, and I think it's important because, like Jen said, we have lots of school districts have great curriculum, but it doesn't mean that all of the resources are being used from the curriculum that they have. And so families and also educators, if you use your scope and sequence, and Jen will talk about that a little bit more, or we can talk about that more, to look at whatever text your child is reading, that will help you to make sure that you are actually presenting them with decodable text. So Jen showed you all those characteristics of leveled text and then decodable text. You never want to see repetitive text with your emergent readers, because they will be memorizing. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's difficult as not for non-educators, particularly to discern when they're given text. And there are so many resources outside that are available. So you don't always have to, you don't have to use the level text if you're presented with them. Thanks, Jen.
Mm-hmm. And I know that there were quite a few Pennsylvania educators signed up. If you are a Wonders user, I know there are quite a few Wonders districts in our state, or if you are from another state with Wonders, if you do have the Wonders decodables package, their readers do line up very well with their scope and sequence. So if you haven't checked out the decodables that go with it, I would definitely look into it. A lot of teachers have trouble finding them. So if you are a Wonder school, I know that several of you that signed up to come were from a Wonder school. Definitely ask to see them. Some districts don't get the add-on, but if you don't have it, ask about it, because theirs are excellent. Okay, the best decodable text is effective if it works with current knowledge and it matches the sequence or order of instruction that your child's getting at school. And that's going to lead us to our next one. Where do you start? Kate, this was your favorite part. Your school should have a screener.
They don't always.
Right. So if you're not sure, if you're a parent, ask the school for data from your beginning of the year screening. You can just ask and say, do you have my child's beginning of the year screening information? I'd like to read with them at home. What skills should I be working on? If you were to ask me that, I'd be able to tell you what skills I'm covering this week, what skills I covered last week, what skills I'm covering next week. In fact, because of my work with our county library, I am planning on having that in my newsletter for my parents. So if they want to go to the library, they can go to the library and know which phonics skills we're going to be working on so that they are able to check out decodable books that match what we're doing. So ask the school for that information. If not, in our resources that we're going to share in the chat here very soon, we have information about assessments that you can do at home. The one that Kate was recommending most, and I come from a Dibbles school, a Dibbles 8 school, so that's the one I'm most familiar with, which is why I'm saying that Kate is recommending this one. Easy CBM at home. There is a quick video you can watch about how to do it. One of the most important things to do with a screener is to make sure that you're monitoring progress to keep track of if your child is making progress with it. And all of that is explained.
Yeah, and let me just jump in just as one of the things that everyone reads PA. Well, one of the reasons that we exist in the form that we are in now is because we were educators and parents who were not able to access screening data for our children in a way that was usable for us, even though we had the background knowledge to kind of understand data. We just weren't able to easily get that. And so as an organization, we provide that the support for families to help you ask for the information that your schools already have, because schools often do screening and progress monitoring. Progress monitoring is separate. It's what's done when kids are struggling or in some sort of intervention, and it's important, but the screening should be done for all kids within the system at a certain grade on a continuum of grades. It depends. It's recommended, and I could ask Dr. Kastner, who's on here, but I think it's K6 is what is typically recommended for screening kids. But I think early screening is really K2 or 3. So again, many schools have this information, many families do not get it. It's presented differently, but that's why we're here as an organization, because we want to make sure that kids get what they need now and don't wait for systems to change. And so we want to make sure families and educators too, who have questions, because I think, Jen, you can probably attest to this, that sometimes you take data within your school or have taken data and not quite understood why, or how it supports individual children. So this is it's a complex thing, but it is something that families should be aware of and should be asking for, particularly for your really early readers, because we know that if we see any evidence of risk at an early age, that the things you do at home can support that and ensure that or help to support or avoid further risk down the line. And you can also work very closely with your schools to ensure that happens. So again, this is a topic that's not really, we don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but I just want to make sure everyone who's on this call or on this webinar knows that Everyone Reads PA is here to help you understand what you need to understand. And then the Easy CBM is recommended because it is something that's explained very clearly how to do. And it's something you can do in your home even if your school's doing it, so that you can gather that information on your own. And again, we do some of that for families as well. So I'm sorry to jump in there, Jen, but I just wanted to make sure everyone understood.
Oh no, I was expecting that you would be able to share a little more there.
So
thank you. So just a few more things to share before we show our resources at the end. This is Nancy Young's ladder. And sometimes people might say to you, well, the way we've been doing things, they work just fine. Kids were learning to read before. I don't need decodables. It was fine. Well, the reason that may have worked is because there is a percentage of kids that will learn to read no matter what method we're using. Sometimes I like to say, in spite of the method that I was using but we really want to make sure that all of the kids are learning to read, and they all can. They can all learn to read, they can all learn to write if we are using systematic, explicit instruction. But when you're looking at it at this graphic, I mean, we don't want to just focus on 40%, 50% of kids. We want to reach every child in every classroom, no matter where you're sitting right now. Kate and I want your child to be able to learn how to read and write independently. That's our goal. And we know that you're here on a summer night because that's your goal too. And that leads us into our next slide as well. Our Wheels for Reading Improvement by Dr. Shanahan. And you'll notice that he includes parents on his wheels, and you don't always see parents included. And that's not to say, well, obviously it's your job to fix everything if you're a parent. No, we're all part of these wheels of improvement. And you'll notice there are a lot of different pieces of the wheels, but just by being here tonight, we're improving so many different parts of the wheels. And I wanted to remind all of you that you should keep asking the questions and keep working hard in your school, in your community, with your child. It may not all fix everything overnight, but each time we're moving forward just a little bit, it's going to improve the instruction for our own child and for other kids in our community as well. And when we're working together, we're going to help improve instruction for all kids in the state or wherever you may be right now. I know a lot of us are Pennsylvania focused, but some of you are beyond Pennsylvania. So it can feel lonely at times, but know that you're part of all of these wheels together, and just working on your little part of the wheel can make a big difference. So I just wanted to remind all of you that some days you do feel alone, but you're not. We're all here to help you.
And Jen, I want to just add that Dr. Shanahan is a researcher, and he is very, very well versed in evidence-based instruction. I mean, he's one of the experts that we go to help us decipher all of this kind of complex stuff. And
Yes.
The parent piece is an evidence-based piece.
Yes.
We know that there is a lot of research that supports the involvement of parents in many facets of literacy instruction. Intervention is one very important one. So as families, you should feel empowered to engage in the process, not only because you want to be, but because we know that when you are, and you are given data and information and part of that process, that it's better for your children. So Jen, thank you for sharing that. And it's very exciting that you were allowed to recreate Dr. Shanahan's wheel, which is a pretty big deal.
It was quite an honor. I had a very great chance to interview him a few months back too. He was on a national reading panel also. So he is definitely someone who, when he shares something about research, we listen. So as Kate was saying, it's based on research that parent involvement is helpful. And if you're an educator, you'll see on the wheels how many different places we are involved. So professional development and things like that. Make sure you're choosing carefully the things that you're spending your time on if you have a choice. And then just to finish up a few things, if you're thinking, oh my goodness, my community needs some more decodable books in the community, there's an organization that can help you with that. They already have a whole process set up. They can bring the materials into your community. They provide professional development for the librarians in your community, and they can also help with schools. They can support your libraries with initiating collections, and they can also provide awareness for literacy resources. And there's more about that on our extra resources as well. And now I'm going to go into our extra resources piece because it does answer a lot of the questions, but feel free to put any other questions that you might have into the chat. And also, I wanted to say thank you for spending time with us tonight. I appreciate you coming and listening to me talk about literacy for a long time. I could talk about it for a really long time, and some of you on this call could definitely vouch for that. I am sure of it.
Yeah.
And also, Kate, thank you, Kate, for giving me a chance to share with everyone.
Well, and I wanted to say thank you from Everyone Reads PA. We work with families every day, and we are so grateful for you to share your knowledge with us. And when you all see the work that she's not only done on the presentation, but on the resources, you're going to get very excited because, again, she told you what decodables are. We know why we use them, but now you need to know where to get them and what to kind of what to do with them. So Jenn is going to share some resources with you, but I want to just let all of you who are here know that if you are if you have questions about your child's literacy development, if you need to understand whether or not they have weaknesses or are struggling, we are here to support you. We have a website where Jenn's going to tell you where you can go, but we are here to support individual families. And one of the things, the reason that we exist is we actually began as an organization to bring the Reading League to Pennsylvania, which is an amazing organization that supports educators across, I think, the world now, but we're here to bring the Pennsylvania branch here. But during COVID, there were some of us who were families and our parents and educators who realized that kids needed support at this moment. So we decided that we would take that part of the mission and support families at the time that kids needed it, because individual kids can't wait for systemic change. So if you need support, again, go to our website. There are different links to get help. And then educators, there are lots and lots of amazing organizations like the Reading League Pennsylvania and the Reading League National and Patton, where you can get help in Pennsylvania. And then one other organization that I want to give a shout out to, again, that I mentioned at the beginning, but it's called Reading Aloud. That's a nonprofit organization that provides access to high dosage tutoring for students who are at risk of reading failure. And they do that on a sliding scale in Pennsylvania. So everyone should donate to all those organizations. Just a shout out for donations, but also that they're there for support for educators, parents, families, etc. So Jenn's going to show you all this great stuff that she has created.
Sorry, I think I got the link in the chat correctly. I think I have the screen share set up the right way. I'm a little rusty, so.
All right, Jenn, I will put the links in. I forgot to do that.
And I think I have them in there, right? You can fix them if I didn't do it right. And I think I have the right thing shared on the screen. So if not, somebody text me and tell me I have it wrong. So in the chat is the link to this Family Night decodable text site. And I apologize that mine's a little stretched. My screen is a little wider than most. And if you're using it on a mobile device, it will look even better. So when you come in, it'll go right to the landing page. And what this site is going to have, and I know we're coming up on time here, so I'll try to be brief and not talk super fast. There's a virtual decodable book tour. On that page are also some discount codes and special offers from some of the publishers. Some of them are actually here tonight. Special thanks to all of them. And then also how to get the decodable books into your community, and then additional resources. Down below that is a little more information about us. You click on the book tour link. It'll take you to, this is my favorite part, I think. Well, it's close. If you scroll down, each publisher has their own little section, and you click on the link, it'll link you to their scope and sequence, which we talked about. Whenever you're looking at a decodable book, you definitely want to check out scope and sequences, and the different publishers all have them. Each one has their own link to their shop, and if a sample is available, you'll be able to click on it. Some of them you can also sign up to get a sample sent to your email once you get to their websites. And then there's like a little graphic that goes with each one of them. And then each company that has a little star by it has an offer for you. And then also the Yak Pack has, and one of their reps are here tonight. Thank you for being here. They are also doing a giveaway for anybody that's here tonight. You can click on the link in their section, and 3 winners will be chosen to win a set of their books. They're going to pick winners tomorrow. And Junior Learning has offered us a 20% off your entire order code for everything on their site, not just Decodable books. They also have some other things you can do, hands-on manipulatives that work for sounds. And they're not just like CAT letters. They also have pieces that have the sounds that work together too. So as someone who has spent a lot of time shifting their manipulatives to things that are more based on what the research says, I found a lot of things that I could use on their website. There are also some other readers on here as well. I really like a lot of them, so it's hard for me to just pinpoint which ones are my favorites, and I would feel bad doing that. Haggerty actually. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Jump in for a second. So families, you might be looking at this and being like, oh my goodness, there's so many decodables. I can tell you that I'm an educator, and I can't teach my kids to read, and I have 5, and I have 2 7-year-olds who have who both of whom need to make sure that they have a lot of exposure to decodable text so that they can be automatic with reading. And what I would say is that I wouldn't get too caught up in like, pick what looks good to you, and know that like the way that I did it in my house is my kids wouldn't let me teach them, but they would definitely read decodable text, so that by the kind of towards the end of kindergarten, I knew that they could read CVC words. It didn't matter what the scope and sequence was for C, and that's consonant, vowel, consonant, like cat, bat, hat, can, man, whatever. But I knew that I could pull CVC word decodables from whatever program there was, or whatever you want to call it. And there are online ones that are free that you can use online, and that they would get that practice that they needed. So I know that it seems over, and you can pick one and stick with it. And that helps you as well. And if you are confused about what your school's doing, it's possible they have a scope and sequence, and it's possible that they don't. So you can always ask your teacher, and if they have one, that will really help you. And if they don't, I would just recommend picking what looks good to you, what's affordable. Like, there are all sorts of variables, but they're accessible. And so don't let it overwhelm you. And again, if you have questions, we're happy to help you kind of tease that out. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay. And there are a lot of the companies have samples available right here on this site, so you can look at them, or have your child sit with you and look at them. And if it's a character or a particular interest they have, go with it, because having them be interested sometimes can be part of the battle. And Haggerty also is releasing a brand new decodable library tomorrow. So their scope and sequence will be loaded on here tomorrow, but they also sent along some samples for you to look at ahead of time. So a sneak peek for you. But each one has different features. As I mentioned, there are so many different types. So you could even sit with your child and pick some out to look at with them. And at the bottom are some frequently asked questions about skills, alignments. There's some alignment charts that are helpful. And there are other ones that are not on here. I've taken meetings with, I think, every single company on the page, and talked to all of the different people that have written them and published them. And they're all great people. And it just, thank you from us to everybody who's donated discounts and their time and efforts. We're so thankful to share this space with all of you. We're all working together for the same thing, and that's to help every kid learn how to read. And then the next link is just the library links. We talked a little bit about that. I know some of you are interested in getting decodables into your library. So I encourage you to reach out to Teach My Kid to Read. They have a really great system. And why reinvent the wheel? Their system works really well. So this is how to get them to come to your town. And I linked the most important links to get you to the right place, and then feel free to explore while you're there. And just a quick note that if you are really interested in decodables in the library, there is a webinar coming up on Thursday at 3. And if you're not available, then you can also watch the replay with Elise Lovejoy and Beth Bevers. So that can teach you a little more about getting decodables into the libraries as well, because I know a couple people were asking about that. And now for the other part that might be our favorite, right? So each of these stars is, again, an expandable list of links, and we can add things to them as we find them. We try to add just enough, but not too much to overwhelm everyone. A lot of you asked about where can I find decodables to read at home, or if I'm outside of the US, where can I find decodables? So these are some that you can read online, free.
And I just have to hop in and just say that I have a favorite, and I know I'm not supposed to, but
no, you can.
I love UFly. UFly is it makes me get kind of teary-eyed. It's a curriculum that was developed out of the University of Florida, right? UFly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very inexpensive, and everyone reads PA has parents who are on this call right now who are implementing it with their children effectively. They're dyslexic children who are little, but they have these free decodable passages that are amazing. And if I could just say, if you could print all of the passages out, put them in a binder and keep them in your house, it is a very easy way to have decodable text for your children with a scope and sequence that is very aligned. And there are all sorts of other resources as well that are available through UFly for free. The only thing that you pay for is the curriculum, and it is implementable by parents, but I'm not going to do that right now. But I just really highly recommend it. And if you're an educator, I also, it's my favorite. So I had to put that plug in there. Sorry.
They are in several places throughout as well. Somebody asked about the Sound Scoop poster and bookmark that's under the free resources. You can download that. Some of the other things from the presentation are in here as well. The soundboards. And then we link to the Express Readers free resources. Dog on a Log sent her link. She has free printables that go with hers. Some of the other UFly things are here as well. And then some of the other things too. As your child becomes a little better at decoding, you'll want to look at the Can Do Kids Academy. A lot of her resources talk about morphology and suffixes, things that you'll want to know when your kid asks you things like, well, I see that these letters are here, but they're not making the sounds I think they should make. That can get a little more complicated to explain. So there's a lot of resources on that site that can help with that. Here are some of the links that are discussed right in the presentation. If you want to check those out, some articles and books that are helpful. And then down below are trainings, some of the people on this call, as well as some other really highly trained individuals help me run the Science of Learning training group. If you're interested in learning more for yourself, and there's definitely trainings for parents if you want to learn just a little bit more, or there's a certain thing that your child's having a really difficult time with. There's trainings for everything right now, and we make sure we go through and only share the ones that are research-based. Here's the Patent Science of Reading Knowledge course sign up. It's currently only open to PA residents and educators. I know Dr. Kastner could tell us those courses fill really quickly. My district did roll it out to our staff as we needed to start signing up and taking it immediately. I know a lot of other districts have not done that. I would encourage anyone that's able to sign up and take the course to do that as soon as possible. As Kate mentioned, I've taken a number of trainings. I will not bore you with the list of them, but I learned a lot of information in this course that I did not know that was very helpful. And I do have, there's a study guide printout that you do at the beginning, I encourage you to print it out and get a little binder for it. And I still get mine out and refer to it for different things that I'm working on, because the information was very helpful.
And
So
Jen,
if you're in PA, go for that.
We have lots of parents who have taken that, and they also recommend it. If you're a superintendent, a principal, a classroom teacher, a coach, I like you have done other coursework to become certified in different things, but it has things that are not, it is very applicable. In terms of having access to what implementation in the classroom, and also just it's done in a really good way, and it's free.
Yes.
So I wanted to just let everyone know that I put in the chat, and it took me a couple tries, but and probably I'm not using the best language, but the website that she's presenting right now, it says website she's showing, and then there are also all the discount codes are on a sheet that's linked there as well.
And then there are also just some other links, assessments, screeners. We need to add in the rest of the groups from Pennsylvania to our communities list. And then if you scroll down below that, Sortagories is offering everybody on this, everybody that's here, a free trial. So all you need to do is click on the picture and enter the code right here, Journey with Jen, with is just a W, and you can get a free trial. The Sortagories, it addresses the bottom part of the reading rope and the top part of the reading rope. It's definitely something worth checking out, especially before you go back to school, but they are also offering a free trial of that as well. It doesn't exactly fit in to the decodable book section, but it has decodables in the level B, which is also here in links. You can check out how it works ahead of time, but you might want to check that out before you head back to school. And it can work for your younger kids. Some of you had asked what to do with some of our older readers that needed extra practice. It can also work for those readers. I was trying to catch all of the different questions that were submitted ahead of time, but I think that Sortagories could work for some of those readers as well. And for those readers that are in high school, just remember that our older readers are going to make progress. That's still progress, but it's going to move a little bit slower. So you might need to be a little more patient with those readers. I'm not saying that they're not going to read or that they can't read, but it may take them a little bit longer, and the progress may not be moving as quickly as you would want it to, or because again, there's not going to be, one magic thing that's going to make everyone read overnight, or of course we'd all be doing that already. It's going to take systematic, explicit instruction. So if anybody has any other questions, you can feel free to put them into the chat, or you can, and I'm going to stop my screen share. You can also contact me on social media or email. I'm pretty easy to find.
Yeah, and Jen, I just want to thank you again for all the time that you took to create this amazing presentation and the resources that you've offered us. We are grateful as an organization. I'm grateful as your friend. And I think that the people who are here with us are also grateful. And just again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can be from any state. Jen and I are both happy to have a conversation. I think, as most of us in this world are, we know how hard it is sometimes to get the information that you're looking for. And again, just please reach out, and thank you for coming. And we will have more of these, hopefully with Jen. So I think we're done, right? Okay.
Unless anybody
Thank you,
has
everyone.
any questions.
Wait, let me just make sure there are no other questions. Everyone's just saying thank you. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great evening.